I hope I sound assertive enough on that, Jose.
Precision.
I'm not just playing around here. I want to be forceful on that, and I want to make sure that people understand what I'm saying. However, I don't expect someone to come waltzing into this room, one of the anti-gun folks in our community, to come waltzing into this room and slapping me across the face. But sometimes one never knows, correct?
I don't think I have my hands today. I'm too busy slapping people.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's turn to Zemi Ikutni. I have to borrow your hard copy again, Jose. Yeah, thank you. So I was just discussing with Jose. I was just discussing with Jose a minute ago that the New York Times is often referred to popularly as the Gray Lady. And I didn't take the time to look up why it's referred to as the Gray Lady, but I do suspect that the Daily News has pretensions of grandeur, since about once a week, instead of using the regular colored ink, they come out as the Gray Lady themselves.
It's leaning that way.
It is. Okay, so I can't remember what the editorial is about today. The title is Hustle.
Hustle?
Hustle.
How so?
Hustle, which means remember. No wonder I couldn't remember it. Yeah, remember that we are the key to keeping the Chamorro heritage alive. It's been a busy month for the Chamorro people, as many throughout the community and the world stepped up to shine an even brighter light on Chamorro heritage. It didn't matter if you were in Sinatna, San Diego, Dededo, or D.C., there was no shortage of celebrations, demonstrations, dancers. Whoa, these dancers that have been doing these dances since 1980? Yeah, part of the heritage. Let's see. We at the Daily News were more than fortunate to have witnessed this pride in Chamorro culture as our reporters had a chance to share important stories of how Chamorros are putting their best foot forward to keep the unique culture alive. From the committed teachers keeping our students immersed in Chamorro studies, to the parents and grandparents, or something that the Spanish brought, maybe farther, and Batsu is the word waltz, conformed to Chamorro phonology. So, Batsu. So baile Batsu, dance the waltz. Yeah, that's...
Well, you certainly aren't tap dancing around this one.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I'm a regular Fred Astaire in this particular case. I suppose nobody even remembers who Fred Astaire is anymore, right?
It's the landing right after the main case. No, he and Ginger Rogers, right?
Of course,
We're
yeah.
famous dancers.
And if I said something like, "Wow, look out the window there, man! Look at it's pouring. This would be a good day for Gene Kelly."
Dancing in the rain.
Singing in the rain.
Singing in the rain.
Singing in the rain.
Too, but yes.
Yeah.
Classic.
Let's see. Learn Chamorro. Speak it often. And it says Bailan Ibatsu. It should say Baila Ibatsu, not Bailan Ibatsu. Baila Ibatsu. Fatinas Ikelagwin. Make the Kelagwin. Fanagwi Ifamaguhun. Show your children. And let's see, share our stories and celebrate all that Chamorros have accomplished in the face of adversity. It seems only fitting that Guam Museum officially opens its doors to the Chamorro as you were, to the Fanogi Chamorro Put I Tanota Charting Our Collective Future exhibit to the public display, to the public today. And of course, it is Michael Bavacqua's approach to separatism. That's what our museum is highlighting today. This special exhibit presents to visitors a chronology of significant events in the island's journey through politics and governance, key issues in understanding where Chamorros have come from and how we should move forward as we set a course for the future.
Should?
Should.
Oh, interesting.
Well, they toned it down a little bit. I think the first cut, it was must. And somebody went through there with a blue pencil and cut it back to should, right?
Could.
Yeah.
May.
This important exhibit will be available at the Guam Museum until May 31, and we urge everyone in our community to take time out to learn more about Guam's political journey.
Did you go to the museum when it first opened, Bob?
I did not. I've been in the conference room once for a CLE presentation. Other than that, I haven't stepped foot in there. Just haven't been able to work into my.
This might be the same, similar exhibit they had when they had that soft opening. That desk looks familiar.
Okay. Harry Truman's desk.
Is that Harry Truman's desk?
Isn't that the picture in the?
Looks like somebody's big, huge desk.
Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't look like Harry Truman. Unless Harry Truman bought his desk in China, I don't think it's Harry Truman's desk. Yeah, my bad, Jose. I assumed. As discussions of political status and self-determination wage on, this is a good place to learn about Chamorro roots as we look forward toward a brighter Chamorro future. Self-determination, the code words for Chamorro independence.
I would say we haven't dimmed.
We haven't
dimmed. I'm not sure what brighter means.
Oh, yeah. I didn't notice. I didn't notice that there was a noticeable dimming. Okay, so before we get to the card, I want to go back to the KBJ curriculum. Ketanji Brown Jackson has been nominated to the Supreme Court of the United States. And she has appeared before the Judiciary Committee of the United States Senate on 3 occasions. And I haven't gotten to it yet. I've got a wealth of material that shows why she should not be confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. And yes, I hear you out there, you on the left, racist. That's racist. What about inclusion? What about diversity? Yeah. Okay, so here we go. Let's work on this, Jose, like we did yesterday. You can be Bud Abbott. You can be the straight man.
Well, I got a couple of trick ones here for you.
All right.
Okay. Bob, who's on first?
Jose? Mm-hmm. How should I know? I'm not the umpire.
Yeah, you got that right. All right, let's see here. Bob, didn't Buddy Orsini have a lot of gall when he sent that paper to BJ?
How should I know, Jose? I'm not an endocrinologist.
Right again. And then the last one. This is a trick question. Bob, is it correct to refer to the man in the other room as them?
How should I know, Jose? I'm not woke.
No, you are correct.
3 for 3, huh?
You are not woke.
Yeah, 3 for 3. Do you think I'd have it? Well, I'm getting a little bit long in the tooth, but if I can hang on long enough, you think I could get past the Judiciary Committee with my well-chosen words when I answer these tough questions?
Biologically, you do not have the gender nor the melatonin.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But beauty's only skin deep, Bob.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, the old saying is, beauty's only skin deep, but ugly goes all the way to the bone. All right, let's take a look and see what we got on the card today. We've got Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism, and Paul is now taking on a new role. He's not only the guy that's calling out systemic racism for those who would advance the narrative in front of the truth, but he's now Paul a whistleblower. And yesterday we talked about how Paul saw an alarming number of eye injuries at a company and reported to OSHA, an office that says that OSHA on the door at the GCIC building. He went back to his office, and for his trouble, he was given a Class A ass chewing, if you'll pardon the graphic nature of the description.
Hope went and visited him?
Yeah, right. Yeah, Hope Cristobal came down for a chat.
Figures.
his second one in less than a year, right?
Nobody filmed it?
Yeah, that would make good afternoon entertainment on Tall Tales. But there's breaking news in the saga of Paul Zerzan, but I'll get to that tomorrow. Then we've got the Waterworks versus Poor People. SHRM, Society for Human Resources Management versus Human Resources. We've got Sticks and Stones versus Words. Now, you know where that one's going to go, right? If I perform this one properly, I may get nominated for an Academy Award.
You might even win one.
I might. And then we've got the Ethics Commission versus apathy. And in great contrast to the apathy of the Ethics Commission, we've got Vince versus GMH. Whatever, you could say what you want about Vince. Remember the flap that Vince had with the lady at the Department of Public Health and Social Services? Yeah, the temerity of him saying unkind things about a woman. And I expected that the Navy would install a yardarm out in front of the hospital, and we would find Vince swinging from that yardarm. But somehow he has managed to survive unscathed. Then we've got Democrats versus Tall Tales, as you were, Democrats versus Ted Cruz, Tall Tales versus KBJ, USA Today versus Nature. And that's, if I get that far, it'll probably be a miracle. Okay, so not much more to say about Paul Zerzan, except that, he blew the whistle on red rice, so to speak, and he's now blown the whistle on, he's in the process of blowing, he started out only blowing the whistle on one company, but seeing how the regulatory agency that he works for functions, he's now blowing the whistle on the Department of Labor, the workers' comp division of the Department of Labor. So we'll stay on this one like a duck on a June bug. A regular feature on the show, of course, is the Public Law 36-34 compliance section, because there's some board or commission almost every day that gets it wrong, and it's almost always the same mistake. Today it's PEALS, Professional Engineers, Architects, and Land Surveyors. PEALS. And they start out with call to order, review and approval of meetings. 3, EBA report. And then there are several items under that. And then the next item is old business. Old business includes law, rules, and regulations review continuing. And then we have 6, new business. So they're going to entertain new business, but they're not telling us what it is. There it goes. Whatever they decide is void, because they have to publish their agenda, and the items on the agenda have to be in sufficient detail to put the public on notice as to what they're discussing. New business doesn't do that, guys. Okay, so much for that. I started on GWA versus poor people yesterday, and since that time, there's been another development here, and that is there was a story in the Daily News that the PUC will address power costs this week. I'm gonna spend a minute on that because this is really important. I explained yesterday that we have the fuel adjustment factor in our power rates. We know that the price of oil is very volatile. It fluctuates greatly during sometimes relatively short periods. So, as you saw the other day, gasoline went up to $5.99. Just a couple years ago, it was down to like $3.15. So, the way that the Power Authority copes with that, the biggest expense that the Power Authority has is fuel, buying oil from Singapore. So as the price of oil changes, the fuel adjustment factor is adjusted. So your power bill will go up or down depending on the price of oil. And this has to be done because we have to have enough money to continue to buy oil from the refineries in Singapore or the lights are going to go out. So the fuel adjustment factor is often changed every 6 months. If there is a dramatic increase in the price of fuel, then the PUC will approve a rate change before that. Now the mechanism is this. The Guam Power Authority, in the person of John Benavente, the director, will petition the CCU for a rate change, an increase or a decrease. The CCU can approve or disapprove it. If it approves, it will then petition the Public Utilities Commission to make the rate change that the Power Authority advocates. Public Utilities Commission also can act sua sponte. Law and Order notebooks there, Jose. Sua sponte. You'll see that oftentimes in legal writings. It means on his, her, its own motion. In other words, the Public Utilities Commission can change the fuel adjustment factor even if the Power Authority doesn't petition for it. And I pointed out yesterday that the CCU is chicken. That in this time when we're behind now on, we're in the hole on the fuel adjustment factor, CCU says, well, let's wait a little while because people are having a hard time. And then sotto voce, which means soft voice, sotto voce, they're saying, let the PUC take the blame for this one. We won't have to, especially those of us who are up for re-election in November. So the article says the Public Utility Commission on Thursday evening will discuss the fuel surcharge for Power Authority customers according to the PUC agenda. And I read the agenda today. Those guys are going to get in trouble. I know exactly what they're going to do at their next meeting. I suspect the other members of the other board and commission are going to be out there with torches and pitchforks. You're showing us up over there, PUC. You never do it wrong. The price of fuel oil is higher than projected, and the PUC could decide whether to increase the fuel charge, which is the most expensive part of the power bill, in order to prevent GPA from losing too much money on its fuel purchases. If nothing changes, GPA is projected it will under-recover, a fancy term, a total of $27.85 million for fuel by the end of July. In other words, that's how far in the hole they are. That's they have bought fuel that cost almost $28 million more than we had money from the fuel adjustment factor to pay for. So we had to take the money from somewhere else to pay it. But no getting around it. We're in the hole about $28 million. The agenda notes a proposed order also will be under consideration at the meeting. PUC Chief Administrative Law Judge Fred Horecki declined to discuss his report or the proposed order until after the information has been presented to the commissioners Thursday evening. He didn't even say that he was prohibited from discussing it. Boy, these guys are just doing everything right, aren't they? He gave a real reason instead of a fake reason as to why he's not discussing it. GPA earlier this month told the Consolidated Commission on Utilities the current surcharge, which is 18.8 cents per kilowatt hour, needs to increase at the beginning of April or the beginning of May to keep the fuel recovery under recovery at $20 million. So it's got to go to over 18 cents just to keep us from at $20 million in the hole instead of going deeper. A customer who uses 1,000 kilowatt hours of power currently pays $278.36 per month. If the surcharge increases April 1, it needs to be 20.6 cents per kilowatt hour, according to GPA, or 21.45 cents if it increases on May 1. The longer you wait, the higher it goes. So you're not doing yourself any favor saying, I don't have a whole lot of money now, so I think I'll borrow money. And that way I won't have to pay it today. But you're going to have to pay it tomorrow. The current fuel charge, which has been in effect since February 1, was based on projections late last year that fuel oil would cost $87.48 per barrel by the end of June, July. But the price of fuel oil during the past week topped $110 per barrel. And we all know why. We've got a president of the United States that wants to take petroleum out of the game. He's an environmental wacko, canceling pipelines, etc., buying oil from Russia. And then, of course, the war in Ukraine doesn't help either. So here we are at $110 per barrel. Maybe we could appeal to the folks in Singapore and say, we're really having a tough time here in Guam, with the pandemic and everything. We're trying to celebrate Chamorro Month. Can you give us a break? Could you let us have it for $95 a month, a barrel? Do you think that would work, Jose?
They'd say, you're a mess, Chamorro.
Okay. The CCU, during its meeting last week, decided not to petition the PUC to change the fuel surcharge, stating the PUC, which monitors fuel prices, is responsible for making any adjustments during the 6 weeks period. Can't blame me. I got cover. The fuel surcharge, also known as the Levelized Energy Adjustment Clause, normally is adjusted twice a year. GPA General Manager John Beneventi last week told the CCU he believes the surcharge should not be changed until May 1 to give customers time to prepare. How would you prepare? The price is going to go up. Go out and get a part-time job?
Go sell a child or two.
Yeah,
for science.
Sell your gold, right? Beneventi says he's comfortable holding off on an increase until then, and GPA has enough money to pay for the next few fuel shipments. Well, that's all we need, The PUC is scheduled to meet at 6:30 p.m. Thursday at the GCIC building. All right, now let's go back to the story that I didn't finish on Monday. Decision on water rates expected shortly. So we got power, we got water, we got a break coming up here. So let's take a break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training. Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
When the pandemic first started and we had no idea that it was going to affect our business till March of 2020. Orders from public health, roadblocks, restriction. It was a very hard time for me. What really has saved my business is the SBA and the PPP program. I felt keeping the employees was so important because I had faith that my government would help me later, the federal government. We applied and we received 2 PPP loans equaling up to $425,000. That money saved me because it's been 2 years. I think 80 or 90% of the restaurants have closed. The only reason I'm here because of my devoted clientele and the federal government.
Thank you for helping save jobs with federal funds.
Thank you to the federal government for all the federal ARP money.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
And now back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so here we are, back on Tall Tales, GWA, the waterworks versus poor people. The Public Utilities Commission will decide whether Guam residents should pay as much as 10% more for water service, including a 5% rate hike, or propose to give customers less water at the lower lifeline rate. Now, I've explained the lifeline rate before, but the lifeline rate is as far as water is concerned, it's the first 5,000 gallons you use, and it's priced much lower than the normal water rates for the 6,000th gallon you use, as an example. And the do-gooder impetus behind the lifeline rate is, well, you know, there are people that really don't have much money, and we want to make sure they can afford their water, so we'll have this 5,000 gallon lifeline rate where people would pay less for that first 5,000 gallons, which is a nice thing, I suppose, for the poor people, but it's a nice thing for everybody else. Because I get it, Jose gets it, you get it, everybody pays less for the first 5,000 gallons. You know, the beauty of a socialization of the rates. Everybody gets brought along to the detriment of the seller of the water. The Waterworks has part of a rate proposal being considered by the PUC, plans to give residential customers less lifeline price water each month. 3,000 gallons instead of 5,000 gallons. So instead of getting the low rate on the first 5, cutting it back to 3, meaning if you're careful and you use only 5,000 gallons every month, you're going to be paying more for 2,000 gallons of water. Now here's the strategy. This is the part that I get a kick out of. It's part of a strategy to get more money from water customers without increasing rates. GWA sells the first 5,000 gallons by customers each month at a rate of $3.01 per 1,000 gallons. Any additional water used each month costs $11.83. So it's almost $9 more for that 1,000 gallons after the first 500, for first 5,000. Based on the current rates, GWA's proposal, the first 5,000 gallons of water used by residential customers would increase in price from $15.05 per month to $32.69 per month. Now remember, this whole Lifeline rate thing is supposed to be to help low-income folks. So the low-income folks are going to be paying, instead of 15, they're going to be paying over 32. Now, but there's a really good reason that they're doing this. It's to help them. It's to help those people who are going to be paying more for their water. The result would be more revenue for the water agency to pay for a proposed $5.2 million assistance program for guess who? Low-income customers.
This program might have some added customers after it's implemented.
Yeah, it's a great marketing device, right? Yeah, so we're going to raise the water rates so that we'll have $5 million for a assistance program for low-income customers, the folks we're raising the rates on. The customer assistance program would help low-income customers pay their water bills and detect and fix costly leaks in their plumbing on private property. Berdalio last week told the lawmakers the current $5,000 cap for the Lifeline was arbitrarily picked, and a Lifeline cap of 3,000 gallons is more in line in what is recognized in national organizations as a minimum amount necessary for health and sanitation. So we did some research. National organization, you only need 3,000 gallons. Maybe we could put a valve on the meter so that, you know, after a customer has used 3,000 gallons in a particular month, the water's turned off. That's all you need. That's what they found out from national organizations. By reducing that Lifeline amount without doing anything else, that provides additional revenue without increasing any of the rates, without increasing it, except for the Lifeline rate, of course, for the one for the low-income folks. Yeah. Wow. Berdalio told senators during a hearing for Bill 266, which would require GWA to implement a customer assistance program and authorize it to make repairs on private property. Although GWA already plans to start a customer assistance program, Bill 266 would require it by law. And this is Sabina Paris, of course. Water rates must increase so GWA can afford to pay millions of dollars in required water and wastewater improvements. GWA recently told the Superior Court of Guam it collects about $110 million per year in revenue. GWA in 2020 asked to increase rates by 37.5% over 5 years, but the PUC that year authorized only 2 increases, a 5% increase in February 2020 and a 5% increase in October 2020. The PUC required GWA to complete several studies by March 2021 to justify additional rate increases. The studies include demand forecasting, labor expenses, staffing, a cost of service analysis, an affordability program, a plan to reduce the number of customers who use septic tanks instead of sewer system, financial and alternatives for capital improvements, and a water loss control program. I remember reading that about half of the water that Waterworks pumps through the pipes goes back into the ground without ever going through anybody's meter. Yeah. This docket is nearing completion, and as of March 2022, awaits a final commission decision, PUC consultant Georgetown Consulting Group stated in written testimony to lawmakers last week. The extensive record is under review by a PUC administrative law judge, and the decision is expected shortly. According to Georgetown, GWA has asked for a 5% increase, and the additional revenue required for customer assistance program would mean a total increase of 10%. The rate plan submitted by GWA last year calls for another rate increase of 10% next year and a 7% increase in 2024. So there's just no getting around it here. There's some really fuzzy thinking going on at the waterworks. We want to help. We want to help low-income folks. You know, so what we're going to do is we're going to start this customer assistance program that will cost us $5.2 million. But we're going to be able to gin up the money to pay for that customer assistance program, which is designed to help low-income customers, by raising the rates on low-income customers. I have a feeling that those folks out there that are surviving on the Lifeline rate right now are shouting, please, please don't help us anymore. You know, you see a guy, you know, you're out in your boat fishing and you see someone out there who's having a really hard time staying afloat. So you help him out by throwing him an anvil, right? Nice going, Waterworks.
I want to implement a new program, Bob.
Sir.
Catching my rainwater and send it back to Waterworks, similar to the solar energy program.
Yeah, that would be.
Will that work?
Net metering. I think there's going to be a citizen making that presentation at the at the PUC Thursday night about net metering. But we should have net metering for water. So you catch the water coming off your roof, and you put it into the water main. And whatever you sell back, you get reimbursed for the same amount they're selling it for. Yeah.
There you go.
Therefore, you don't want that Lifeline rate to go down. Yeah, Jose, are you going to run for the CCU next time?
I think I will.
Yeah.
Just on that issue alone.
Exactly. I think that's a winner.
Now, some states have a right to your rainwater catch.
New Mexico.
Is Guam the similar thing?
No.
Good.
But in New Mexico, you have to pay tax on the water that you catch off your roof.
Wow.
Based on the square footage of your roof or something like that. But you got to remember that New Mexico water is really, in some parts of New Mexico, water is really, really scarce.
So it tax the rain even.
Yeah. So if you're driving, say, from Las Cruces to Lordsburg, you know, it's the world's largest parking lot with no cars out there at all. Yeah. Signs all over the place. Windstorms occur. And then the instructions, if the windstorm comes along, pull off the road, keep your feet off the brakes. Okay, next is SHRM versus Human Resources. Looks like I got somebody who wants to talk about the CCU, I hope. It's Bob, WaterNet. He wants to talk about water and net metering. I guess you got a customer out there. It's Kellis? Bob Kelly. Oh, okay. Is it the Bob Kelly?
The Bob
I
Kelly.
think there are about 3 of them on the island.
Well, this is the one and only.
Yeah, one is more than enough. Good afternoon, Bob. Tell me about water and net metering.
Well, first on net metering is not even good in electricity because it doesn't account for the distribution and standby power costs. So that's the issue about every time you put a kilowatt of hour of power back in the system, you're putting it in, and the avoided cost of generating that is a fair price to pay.
I thought that's what
includes distribution.
I thought that's what the PUC had done, that they had changed it so now it's the avoided cost.
They're working on that. I don't know if it's passed yet, but avoided cost is fair to everybody, but net metering is not.
Sure.
But let's talk about water.
Okay.
So you catch rainwater off your roof. The birds fly over it. The geckos go on it. They poop on the roof and so on. You want to collect that water and put it back in the main for others to drink?
Well, that's Jose's idea. That's not my idea.
I'm still working on it.
Remember, Bob. Bob, remember the name of the show is Tall Tales. But go on.
Yes. Well, if you want to collect water from the roof, it makes usually very good shower water because it's soft. You can use it in toilets, but you would not normally want to use that as drinking water unless you had a good filtration and at least a ultraviolet disinfectant system, because the water that's coming from the outside could have all sorts of things that could be health affecting for people. So the only thing I would say is I think you could use it, but you'd need to have split plumbing in your house to wash your clothes, use it for your toilet, maybe showers, but you would not want it for your drinking water, and you can't put it back in the system. You can just use it to avoid using as much water.
Do you think that Jose was doing a tall tales kind of rap there, Bob?
No, I've known him for years. He really thought that would be a good idea.
Oh, boy. that was my other brother, Jose B, you were talking to.
Yeah. So, not only does the rainwater have stuff in it that it shouldn't, it doesn't have stuff in it that it should. There's no calcium in rainwater or some of the other minerals that you really need to survive. So pumping the water out of the ground has a health dimension to it.
Well, it's certainly, but a lot of times people filter a lot of that out, and, including the chlorine when they run it. I mean, I've got filters where I get my drinking water, so I understand that. But if you're taking it and just filtering it as you're taking it out to drink, then it's not an issue at all. Right in our conference room that Jose uses, we've got a water cooler that takes the water from the tap, but it puts it through a filter, so it's just like when you go out and get bottled water. But anyway, I just wanted to comment, yes, you could use that water from the roof, but use it to wash clothes, do showers, and things like that.
I got just one question, Bob. You said that the rainwater is soft, right?
Yes.
Do they have a deal with Culligan?
Well, I'm not sure. That's right. They may very well do that.
Yeah.
In fact, if you see some of the water softeners, I think one of them's called Rainmaker or something. So they kind of like to play on that issue also.
Well, the next time it starts raining, I'm going to step outside and holler, "Hey, Culligan man!"
Yes.
Thanks for enlightening us, Bob. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'll try
Have a good day.
I'll try to work with Jose on that
Well, I mean, he's kind of incorrigible, but do what you can.
I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
All right. So we got a caller here that wants to make his mark about net metering for water. Let's see here. New Mexico. All right. Okay, let's take a short break, and after the break, we'll come straight back to New Mexico and find Mark.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagatna location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
Okay, so here we are. We've got Mark who wants to talk about New Mexico. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, come on. So, I went there about 5 years ago to visit a friend of my wife's, and we went to Los Alamos. And that's a pretty interesting place. All the different historical stuff about the atomic bomb, and it was so cool how they live on what they call arroyos that basically look like the fingers of a hand, but they're elevated, a few hundred feet.
When I first got to
all
Arroyo,
the houses are on top of that.
When I first got to New Mexico, I was surprised how many relatives Patty had there. But go on, Mark.
Yeah. So I mean, it was a very interesting place. It really was.
Yeah.
And it was around March, so it was just coming into spring. It was a little chilly, but not too bad.
Yeah, it's a nice place. Los Alamos, pretty interesting place. Extremely well-educated population, obviously.
Yeah, and her friend that worked there was the HR manager for the Los Alamos Fire Department. She's since retired, but yeah, it was a nice visit. A lot of beautiful scenery. I mean, you know, they don't get the sunsets like we do on Guam, but yeah, a lot of the mountain ranges and stuff really made up for it.
Yep. Well, thanks for the report, Mark. You made your mark again today.
Right.
All
Thanks.
right. Yeah, New Mexico. That's the southwestern part of the state. It's pretty dry. You've got northern New Mexico, a lot of mountains. It's quite a variety of different terrains in New Mexico. Once upon a time when I lived there, my brother-in-law came to visit, and we were up on what's called the West Mesa. It's on the west side of Albuquerque, and it's high. It must be at least 1,000 feet higher than the city of Albuquerque down below. And my brother and I were looking around there, and he says, "Bob, what's that great big gravel road that kind of runs right through the middle of Albuquerque?" And I said, "That's not a river. That's not a road. That's the Rio Grande."
All dried up.
Which it is most of the year, yeah. Yeah, it's very easy to cross. But, of course, nobody wants to cross it in New Mexico. It's the other side they'd like to cross from. Okay, so going on to the next item on the card here, it's SHRM versus Human Resources. SHRM means Society for Human Resources Management. It's a nationwide, if not international, group of professional human resources types, people that run the human resources department in large companies, schools, colleges, universities, etc. I've been a member of SHRM myself back in the days when government personnel was my jurisdiction at the 28th Guam legislature. It's a pretty good group here on the island, pretty active group, but they sent out a notice of their next meeting, and it's very, very disappointing. And it indicates to me how dangerous the times we live in are. Now, I'm going to reference Robert Underwood here again. Robert has been teaching critical race theory since 1972. Remember that? So apparently some of what Robert has done has caught on, because Human Resources Department, SHRM is putting on a Chautauqua on April the 13th. And this is what it's all about. You were invited to the SHRM Guam chapter breakfast briefing, Walk Your Talk, putting D, E, and I into action, held virtually on April 13th. Putting your D, E, and I into action. Walk your talk. You got to not only mean what you say what you mean, but you got to mean what you say. And here's the explanation. True diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace is more than just words. It's prioritized action. Join Sean V. in a workshop and Q&A where participants will explore what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean, and how diversity, equity, and inclusion should be present in the workplace. Learn how prioritizing and embracing DE&I as actions instead of policy make for a safer and more productive workplace, and more importantly, create happier employees. To me, this is very, very scary. We all know what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean, right? I think I've got a worksheet here to kind of explain it in case anyone has forgotten. Well, I've got one here for equity. Equity and equality sound similar, but have widely different implications. Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary defines equality as, quote, the same degree of dignity or claims as the equality of men in the scale of being and equality of rights. The Declaration of Independence assertion that all men are created equal recognizes this equal value and dignity and personhood of each human being. That's equality. Now, equity is a better word because it's shorter, right, Jose? Equity has traditionally been a common law term referring to civil remedies. So you'll hear lawyers talking about legal remedies and equitable remedies, but it's a hard word to define in that context, and most people don't use it anyhow. It can also mean the impartial distribution of justice. But in the jargon of identity politics, equity describes a policy that recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. That's what equity means. So, equality means everybody starts at the starting line. Where you finish is kind of up to you, what you do, kind of how meritorious you are in running the race. Equity means no matter what, everybody gets to the finish line at the same time. All right, let's run for the big halftime show, and I'll be back and talk a little bit more about my disappointment in Sherm, and then we'll get to Sticks and Stones May Break My Bones.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Ukrainian peace talks resume. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Russian and Ukrainian negotiators huddling in Istanbul, Turkey, for their first face-to-face peace talks in 2 weeks. Turkey's President Erdogan speaking through an interpreter, claiming there is reason to be optimistic.
I can say that the telephone traffic we are carrying out with Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky is advancing on a positive direction.
Ukraine's President Zelensky, ahead of the talk, said his country is willing to declare its neutrality and is open to compromise on the disputed Donbass region. Ukrainian forces claim to have retaken more territory from the Russians, but the Kremlin is said to be sending in mercenaries.
We're getting word that the Russians are planning on sending in what is essentially a small private army to fight alongside their forces. If and when they get here, they will come up against what President Zelensky of Ukraine has called his own foreign legion, fighters from the US, from the UK, and so many other countries who are here to do their part for Ukraine's freedom.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt in western Ukraine clarifying his remarks that Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power. President Biden Monday saying that is simply his personal feeling.
I wasn't then, nor am I now, articulating a policy change. I was expressing the moral outrage that I feel, and I make no apologies for it.
But Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz says presidential misstatements are dangerous.
This is like Mr. Magoo as president, where every time he explains one thing, it gets worse and worse and worse, and we've got nuclear weapons pointed at each other. It is incredibly dangerous, this kind of presidential weakness.
Senator Cruz on Fox's Hannity. Actor Will Smith has apologized to comedian Chris Rock for slapping him during the Oscar Awards on Sunday night, posting on social media, "I was out of line and I was wrong." America is listening to Fox News.
$15 might not get you that far, but Chili's is bucking the trend with $15 meal deals. At Chili's, $15 gives you not one, not two, but 3-course meal deals complete with a drink, a starter, and an entree. Mix and match 3-course meals 15 ways to Sunday with soup, salad, or chips and salsa to start, and ranchero chicken tacos, honey chipotle crispers with rice, bacon ranch quesadillas, or personal fajitas for the main course. Build your own $15 meal deal at Chili's. More life and great value happen here.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
President Biden sending Congress his budget request for the next fiscal year.
In the $5.8 trillion fiscal spending blueprint, there's nearly $800 billion for defense spending and more than $900 billion for domestic programs, though the White House is staying tight-lipped on exact items and their price tags before congressional negotiations. There's a so-called billionaires tax, a 20% minimum tax on households worth more than $100 million. The White House says that will reduce the deficit by about $360 billion over the next 10 years. It would raise the corporate tax rate to 28% and raise the rate on the nation's wealthiest income earners.
Fox's Lauren Blanchard in Washington. The Senate's Judiciary Committee setting up a vote for next week to recommend the full Senate confirm Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson. There are fears pending change in immigration rules could trigger another rush on the U.S. southern border.
Border agents expect a new surge of migrants following the possible lifting of Title 42, the CDC's public health rule used to deport 1.7 million immigrants the last 2 years. Without it, agents say most migrants will qualify for humanitarian parole or seek asylum. Last month, agents apprehended almost 165,000 migrants, more than half deported under Title 42. This month, apprehensions are expected to exceed 200,000, almost 7,000 a day. Without Title 42, the Border Patrol expects up to 18,000 apprehensions daily.
Fox's William Lajeunesse. The Food and Drug Administration has just issued a negative review of a closely watched experimental drug for the debilitating illness known as Lou Gehrig's disease. This ahead of a scheduled vote by an FDA advisory panel. Patients, their families, and lawmakers have been lobbying for approval of the drug, but FDA reviewers say the single study was not persuasive. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When the pandemic first started and we had no idea that it was going to affect our business till March of 2020. Orders from public health, roadblocks, restriction. It was a very hard time for me. What really has saved my business is the SBA and the PPP program. I felt keeping the employees was so important because I had faith that my government would help me later, the federal government. We applied and we received 2 PPP loans equaling up to $425,000. That money saved me because it's been 2 years. I think 80 or 90% of the restaurants have closed. The only reason I'm here is because of my devoted clientele and the federal government.
Thank you for helping save jobs with federal funds.
Thank you to the federal government for all the federal ARP money.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
again. Second half of Tall Tales, another great halftime show, just as we always expect. And I'm still working with Society for Human Resources Management versus Human Resources. And I just read the bad news for you that the local chapter is sponsoring this little Chautauqua called Walk Your Talk, putting DE&I into action. And DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, are offshoots. Well, they're not off. They're actually a central part of critical race theory. Because you'll remember, critical race theory has several tenets. One is that everything that you encounter in life today is governed by race. Race controls everything. And that if you understand it, there are two different kinds of folks that are caught up in this racial classification. There are the what word am I looking for here, Jose? Where am I here? The oppressed and the oppressors. Yeah. How did I miss that one? Yeah, so the oppressed are always making things really difficult for the oppressors. And the oppressed are easily identified because they're white folks. Preferably white men. The very best example, white Christian or white Jewish men. They are the oppressors. The oppressed folks are what the folks over there in critical race theory call people of color. Now, you could be white as a driven straw and still be a person of color if you entiendo español. If you speak Spanish, if Spanish is your mother tongue, you may not know it, but you are a person of color.
But there has been some sort of weird movement among CRT to start calling some Hispanics white supremacist Hispanics. I don't know if you read about that. It's really crazy.
I'm not surprised. But this is the division. So once you understand about the oppressed and the oppressors, and that the white oppressors have set everything up to their advantage to always victimize the oppressed, the people of color, and it's been that way since 1619, since that person that wrote the eponymous column, or as you were, actually short story for the New York Times. That's Ms. Hannah Jones. It said the United States actually was created because the folks in the colonies were afraid that the British would abolish slavery. That's what she said. And so, we started out that way, and we're still that way. And we have systemic racism, that is the name for this oppressor relationship. And we have white supremacy, which is, of course, the absolute essential element of the whole thing. So if you are part of the oppressed, you're never going to get an even break. The only hope for you is to embrace cultural Marxism, especially critical race theory, because critical race theory holds that because of white supremacy, oppressed, oppressors, etc., the only explanation for an uneven distribution of people of color in various positions in the country, it only can be systemic racism. So if 12% of the people in the United States are African Americans, then 12% of the people admitted to the colleges should be African Americans, and so on across the board, because there's no other reason except systemic racism for that not to occur. So in order to get where we want to go, critical race theory posits anti-racism. Now, you might think that anti-racism just means, well, no, I'm not a racist. I try to be as colorblind as I can. I treat all people the same way, no matter how they, what they look like, or even how they sound, or whatever. And I'm trying to be fair to everybody. And when I'm looking for people that hire folks at my shop, I just hire the best person. And I don't care if he's a person of color or white or whatever. And the guys like Kendi, whatever his name is, like his real name is Ben Rogers. Yeah. Ibram X. Kendi. Yeah. He would be standing there and say, you just showed us what systemic racism is, because you said you try to be colorblind and you don't care what color a person is, you'll hire the best person for the job, which means you'll hire the white guy. Systemic racism. So the anti-racist remedy for systemic racism is more racism. We've got to make sure that all the numbers come out right, that we do away with things like standardized tests, et cetera, because they're just examples of systemic racism, because white people will do better on the standardized tests, and there we go again. So this idea of a meritocracy, same thing. I think you get the picture, and I'm not exaggerating this a bit. And if you want further explanation, Robert Underwood has been teaching critical race theory since 1972. So it's very dangerous. Now imagine yourself getting on an airplane to fly from here to Honolulu. What is your expectation of the folks up there in the cockpit, the folks that fly the plane? What do you really care more than anything else about? I'll tell you what I really care about. I want someone who really knows how to fly that plane.
But is it a diverse mixture of people?
Yeah, that doesn't mean diversity, does it? Diversity means we have to have all different kinds in the right proportion, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. So gender as well.
And gender. Now, if the person that happens to be behind the wheel there, or the yoke in that airplane, can fly the plane, so much the better. But that's not what's important. It's DEI that's really important. And that's SHRM. That's what they're telling you. That's what's really important. So when you go to the doctor, now, doctors are probably more diverse than just about any other profession in the country. You know, I regularly see I see a dermatologist. It's Korean dentist. I've been to just about every color of doctor you could imagine, and so far I think I've been lucky, or maybe not lucky. Maybe that's just the way things are. I've had good medical care, but that would be accidental and not a celebration of DEI, according to these folks here, because the fundamental thing is inclusion. So you have to make sure that whatever it is that you're setting up, you've got the right diversity, and that equity is the end product of the whole thing. So if you have a doctor who is skill level, let's say here's a good example, Ben Carson, former Secretary of the Department of Health Education, of Department of Health.
HUD.
Of HUD,
yeah.
Housing and Urban Development. Ben Carson, a brain surgeon, maybe the best we'll ever have, right? An extremely qualified person. But if he applied and some other person applied that wasn't, that was, say, just a relatively journeyman brain surgeon, somebody who'd only maybe completed 2 or 3 surgeries, it doesn't matter. It's inclusion and diversity that counts. Ben just happens to be a person of color, so if you're his patient, you got it made. But that's a description of where we're going here with this critical race theory, cultural Marxism, anti-racism, etc. And a couple days ago, we had a story about students at Yale Law School literally hounding a speaker out of the school because they didn't like what she was saying. And I said, this is an extremely bad situation, much worse than a bunch of idiot law students acting like idiots in a law school class. Because here's my reasoning: kids that go to Yale and Harvard are going to wind up running this country, if not the world. If you look at the bios of most of the influential people in our country, they went to Ivy League schools. And there's Ivy League at Columbia, Brown, Dartmouth, etc. But the top two are Yale and Harvard. So when Harvard goes to hell, those guys are going to get out of law school someday, and they're going to be running the country. If you think it's bad now, wait till those guys take charge. So my point was that it was bad in the near term, but horrible in the future. And I say the same thing here for SHRM. If the human resources development community in our country is embracing DEI, and they're being persuaded that it's more than just words, it's prioritized action, and that by learning how the actions will make workplace safer and make for a safer and more productive workplace, and more importantly, create happier employees. This is junk. This is garbage. And our SHRM community is signing up and they're paying $25 for it. It is an extremely serious danger signal. Bad enough when we got Robert Underwood, who represented us in Congress, who was the president of our university. Bad enough when he is unable to see what's really going on and embrace it. But when you got the human resources community involved, that's not just bad, that's tragic.
And sometimes these types of philosophies paralyze a company because it doesn't become about the company anymore. It becomes about creating this rainbow on the surface.
Absolutely. And I've read articles that say that, even before all this stuff started, when it came time to fill a vacancy, the qualifications of the applicants weren't quite as important as covering all these bases. And of course, Elizabeth Warren made her bones on being a person of color, right? And one of the things that I read was that Harvard was very anxious to hire her because Elizabeth Warren was their first person of color. So they could say, we have a person of color now, Elizabeth Warren. She's a Cherokee or something like that. It's just a complete scam. And the scam is only possible because of this flawed ideology: diversity, equity, inclusion. Diversity is not our strength. Other than Switzerland, I don't know if it's, and Swiss people are diverse in that there are at least 4 different language groups in Switzerland. But as a matter of ethnicity or race or however you want to describe it, they're all the same. But I don't know of any place in the world where diversity is actually a strength. It doesn't work in Belgium. It didn't work in Uganda. It's not working in the United States anymore. So it can work. It worked for quite a while in the United States because, the United States was the great melting pot. Didn't matter where you came from, you come to the United States, and you could blend in and become an American. And one of the strengths of America compared to China is this: China can never make an American into a Chinese. But the United States can certainly make a Chinese into an American. We see it all the time. So as long as, and the thing that held us all together was a dedication to certain ideals, the things that you read in the preamble to the United States Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and you shut up over there in your lazy boy chair. The country wasn't perfect when it started, but the blueprints were there. The blueprints made it clear as to where the country, where the people that founded the country wanted to go. And we almost made it. Right up until the time of George Floyd, we were very, very close to making it. And now it's all turned around and gone backwards. Okay, so Sherm, I don't know. I go to some of their programs because I can get continuing legal education credit for it, but I don't know if I want to go there anymore because I don't believe in diversity, inclusion, and equity as a way to run a company, a university, a school, a radio station, or anything else. I go back to Justice Harlan's decision in Plessy versus Ferguson, where Justice Harlan said, the government has no business knowing what anyone's race is. Government should be colorblind. All right, so much for that. Let's go on to sticks and stones. You know the old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Well, this is something that Jose harvested from Facebook, and it goes like this. Let me share my perspective. Yes, violence being physical or, quote, articulated words. Kind of tells us where we're coming from right there, doesn't it? Articulated words can be violence, are never good. So physical violence are never good, and articulated words that are violent can never be good. I think that comment pushed him and his wife overboard. Now, we know who he's talking about here, right? His wife has a medical condition where she struggles. It's alopecia, similar to a patient with cancer, and is on chemo and suffers from hair loss. Gosh, I hope this is not hurting your feelings, Jose.
I resemble that remark.
You know, articulated words can be violent.
There's a plural to hair, though. It's hairs lost.
Yeah. We don't know what Will's wife have gone through, but I am sure it ain't easy. Yeah, having an affair with another man is one of the things she's going through. Yeah. The joke on her being G.I. Jane to a patient who is suffering from hair loss condition alopecia is hurtful. Ooh. And comments like that often can push a patient into severe depression and maybe even suicidal. So let's put a big sign out in front of GMH and GRMC. Please don't say G.I. Jane in this building. Will Smith, yes, got carried away with his emotions. And I'm sure his wife played a significant part of his personal emotions. Now, I saw the slap.
Words matter, right?
Yeah. Will Smith actually held back. Will Smith is a boxer, and I know he can hit and punch. His slap was held back, or it would have been a KO. So he could have punched him hard and knocked him out, but instead he just slapped him. But words can be violent too. That said, what we learn on both ends, never pull a joke on a patient who's struggling because we cannot predict how our joke comment will affect them. For Will, perhaps it would have been better to withhold physical violence. Perhaps. Yeah, let me think.
Words matter.
Yeah, perhaps it would. You got a coin? I never carry. I used to always have a pocket full of quarters, Jose. But you got a coin you could flip there so we could get some real decision making on this. Yeah. So for Will, it perhaps would have been better to withhold physical violence and stand up in another way. That said, the joke to a patient can be considered violence to her emotionally, and often longer lasting than physical harm.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like what we're talking about is kind of a quid pro quo here, right?
Mm-hmm. So that's acceptable.
As lawyers would say, the two behaviors were in pari materia, made of the same thing. Now, here's the punchline here. Be respectful to all who are suffering from an illness. Peace and love. I would add this. Be respectful to all who are suffering from an illness or risk a punch in the nose. Yeah, so pretty profound, huh, Jose?
And completely void of context.
Exactly. Yeah. But it certainly embraces the woke approach to society, doesn't it?
Even projecting the severity of the punch. It could have been bad.
Yeah. He could have hit him a lot harder. So it wasn't that bad. He could have hit him a lot harder.
He could have pulled out a gun.
Yeah. And in the very beginning, yes, violence being physical, articulated words. Violence can be articulated words. So this is something Jose harvested from Facebook, and when I found out who posted it, it all fell into place and made perfect sense. Are you ready? Do you want to know who posted this? I'll tell you as soon as we get out of Wrigley Field. Stay tuned. 7th inning stretch coming up.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, 7th inning stretch. I got up and strolled around a little bit here, see what's going on in the ballpark. I lost my Facebook image somehow in the process. I wonder how that happens, Jose. Happens a lot. Let me get back on Facebook here. So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, and I just read this From the Heart post on Facebook. It's some real behavioral guidance as to how to act, and reminding us all that words can be violence, etc. And I titled this on the card instead of somebody versus, well, I did, it's sticks and stones versus words, right? So I remember growing up, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. So, you know, that snotty kid who called you names, you know, the absolute comeback. Hey, I don't care what you say. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me, you punk. Keep jabbering. Yeah, that's the way it used to be. But nowadays, Sticks, stones, and words can hurt you. Be careful. So I read this this post that Jose harvested from Facebook, very woke, and I said when I found out who the author was, it fit in perfectly. So let me have a drum roll, Jose, and I'll tell you whose post this is. It is none other than Dr. Tom Shea. Tom Shea is woke. And we've known that ever since way back in the beginning of the era of George Floyd, when Tom Shea was down at the plaza, as you were Skinner Plaza, with some doctors dressed in white, presenting themselves as white coats for Black Lives Matter. Now that's when I think a lot of folks were pretty much uninformed about Black Lives Matter. And I think the national tendency was, yeah, okay, well, sure, Black Lives Matter, right? Every life, but if you ever said every life matters in front of one of the BLM folks, they would crucify you, yeah. But it kind of fit into most people's thought processes. But later, it didn't take long when we found out what Black Lives Matter was really about. It's about graft, corruption, violence, vandalism, looting, all of the things that no one in his right mind would celebrate.
So taking the time to really understand what you're reacting to, that's what it is about. Because it means taking your time to understand what you're reacting to is what it comes down to. Because Black Lives Matter, taking the knee, was about condoning the mostly peaceful protests without knowing that you're condoning it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It was very cleverly marketed, and it worked very well, and it's still working in some places. And for Patrice Cullors, it worked really well. It worked over $3 million worth of real estate well. But it's a scandalous organization, rooting, as you were, looting, rioting, on and on and on and on. And a lot of corruption involved. So as this became known to us, did Tom Shea come forward and say, that thing about white coats? I'm separating myself from that. That's not what I want to be identified with. No, he didn't. In fact, he doubled down here on Facebook, didn't he?
As long as you have a reason.
Yeah.
Violence is okay.
Yeah. Well, it's not if you have a reason. You have to first recognize that speech can be violence. And that's one of the classic things that the repressive tolerance gang from critical race theory would tell you. Speech can be violence. So when speech is violence, we not only can, but we must silence it. We must turn it off. We shouldn't allow those people to speak because speech is violence. Very, very disappointing. A well-known doctor with a good reputation, the Society for Human Resources Management. It's just wonder, are there any people left that really understand what's going on and are in a position to do something about it? Okay, next item on the card. Ethics Commission versus apathy. Now, the Ethics Commission was started not long after Lulian Guerrero was sworn into office. She got bragging rights for saying the Ethics Commission has been on the books ever since, and no one ever appointed the commissioners. I appointed the commissioners. And for the next year after she appointed the commissioners, Jose, it wasn't so much what the commissioners did, it's what they didn't do. They didn't do anything. Well, we can't entertain complaints now. We've got to have a building, and we've got to have a lawyer. We have to have an executive, on and on and on. So finally, they've said they're ready to start entertaining complaints. So here's a story in today's Post. Ethics Commission senator weigh in on allegations against GVB board members. Governor Lulian Guerrero has so far remained quiet about the public confrontation between Guam Visitors Bureau President Carl Gutierrez and the GVB board members he accused of being unethical for violating the open government law. But the Guam Ethics Commission will meet to, quote, discuss the matter. Boy, I'll bet you those folks on the GVB are literally shaking in their boots. Now we're really calling in the heavy artillery here. Senator Amanda Shelton, whose committee has oversight of tourism, also said she's encouraged by GVB Board Chairman Milton Morinaga's statement welcoming any independent review of the board's actions. She's encouraged. The board is composed of member-elected representatives and appointees from the legislature and the governor to ensure the board acts in the best interest of our visitor industry. Additionally, I am immediately reviewing the mandates of the GVB board to help us determine the next course of action, Shelton said when asked whether her committee will hold an informational or oversight hearing. As decisive as she is, you know when she's going to decide, Jose? The day before the legislature adjourns, sine die. Yeah, after she figures out how to pass 3 or 4 times. Jesse Kanga, executive director of the Ethics Commission, said the commission will have a regular meeting to discuss the matter, but he has so far not received any instruction to formally invite the GVB board or their officials. Well, how could he? Instruction from who?
They have to hire that. Wait.
Yeah, instruction from who? Well, you know, they could get on their WhatsApp chat and decide that, right? Yeah. I just wonder how long it's going to be before the Ethics Commission violates the open government law. I'd give you almost long odds on that one, or short odds on that one, Jose. After speaking with the commission chairperson, we are aware of the situation and the commission will schedule a meeting in accordance with the open government law to discuss the matter, Kanga said. Gutierrez, during Thursday's board meeting, accused board members of colluding and ganging up to determine the outcome of each board meetings, particularly on allocating program funds. The former governor accused board members of being unethical or having conflicts of interest by not recusing themselves when it comes time to discuss and vote on tourism program incentives or other actions that Gutierrez said would benefit the board members, businesses, or employers. He also accused them of violating the Open Government Act by meeting outside of publicly noticed meetings to discuss board matters. Board members said they were appointed and elected to serve the GV board specifically because of their involvement in the tourist industry. The actions of the board, they said, naturally were geared toward improving the visitor industry as a whole. This open confrontation during a public meeting comes at a time when Guam is trying to welcome back tourists. Yeah, a little editorialization there at the end of the story. So the Ethics Commission, and at the very beginning, you know, my analysis was this Ethics Commission is not going to go anywhere because I don't see anyone who is appointed to that commission who has any juice. Now, juice in that particular context means the ability to dig in and get stuff done. Carl Gutierrez, love him or hate him, is a classic example of juice. If Carl Gutierrez wants to get something done, he gets it done. But none of the folks on the board were very good at coming up with excuses as to why they. Well, we've got to hire a lawyer so we could do our rules and regs, et cetera. Like none of them had pencils and paper. None of them could go online and copy somebody else's. So this is what I see. I see the great Karnak here. I see the Ethics Commission looking for all kinds of excuses as to not decide any of this controversy. Things like, we can't move forward because no one made a formal complaint. We can't move forward because we don't have subpoena power. We can't move forward because, let me circle back to you on that one. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts that they won't do anything with this. Not understanding that any kind of adjudicative tribunal cannot not decide. Let me repeat that. An adjudicative tribunal cannot not decide. If the Ethics Commission does nothing here, nothing at all, they've decided in favor of the non-government board members at GVB, and they've decided against Carl Gutierrez because they didn't do anything. Everybody knew it was out there. Everybody knew there was an issue. And since the Ethics Commission didn't take it on, it's not what they did, what they do, Jose. It's what they don't do. And sometimes what they don't do can be every bit as important as what they do. I was going to say do-do, but I caught myself in time.
Well, it is their duty.
Yeah. All right, let's head for Churchill Downs, and we'll come back and see what Vince has got to say today.
When the pandemic first started, and we had no idea that it was going to affect our business till March of 2020. Orders from public health, roadblocks, restriction. It was a very hard time for me. What really has saved my business is the SBA and the PPP program. I felt keeping the employees was so important because I had faith that my government would help me later, the federal government. We applied and we received 2 PPP loans equaling up to $425,000. That money saved me because it's been 2 years. I think 80 or 90% of the restaurants are closed. The only reason I'm here because of my devoted clientele and the federal government.
Thank you for helping save jobs with federal funds.
Thank you to the federal government for all the federal ARP money.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Back at it again with the Lenten season menu with Mezcla, giving you a variety of food you can enjoy and pick from, like the fish tacos, spicy buttered shrimp, parrotfish escabeche, lobster pad capral pasta, crab-crusted Chilean sea bass, and more. There you have options. Offered at Hagåtña location for lunch and dinner only at Mezcla. For reservations, call 671-479-2652. What are you waiting for? Let's go celebrate the Lenten season with Mezcla.
So we were strolling into Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky for the home stretch here. Jesse called in, and he wants to ask a question about the GVB board. So I hope your question's not too hard, Jesse, but I'll do my best to answer it, okay?
Okay. Just wondering who appointed the non-government people on the board?
They're elected.
They're elected
by the industry members. So the
industry members.
Yeah, the Visitors Bureau. You can be a member of the Visitors Bureau. You sign up, you pay dues, etc., and the industry board, the industry members elect the non-government members.
Okay, but those people could be working in the tourism industry as well, or the whole.
You'd almost say they must be working in the tourism industry. Yeah, that's
okay.
the design of the board.
So it's kind of weird because if he's saying it's it just seems like that's already been a conflict of it's acknowledged that there's a conflict already, of interest with by having those type of people on the board, right?
Well, that's a possibility, and I'll give you kind of the long answer here. Once upon a time, there was a member of the Guam legislature named Ricky Salas, and when we had someone on the floor of the legislature charged an appointee as having a conflict of interest because he had experience in the industry that he was to regulate, Ricky said it's not a conflict of interest, it's a harmony of interest. And that may fit here because the design of the Visitors Bureau is this. It's supposed to bring together knowledgeable people who understand the tourism industry, and governmental employees, to decide how to spend the tourist attraction fund money. So if you didn't have people from the tourist industry in there, you would not be faithful to the design. So there was a column in the paper the other day that said, how about doing it this way? When a matter comes before the board that implicates a particular business, that particular member just leave the room and not get involved. So as I understand it, most of the issues are rather generic, not business specific. For instance, we want to have more air traffic come down here. So we say, well, in order to entice more airplanes to come down here, we will knock down the landing fee by so much, as an example. It isn't a good, but that would benefit all airlines, not just the guy from United Airlines, Sam Shinohara. You see what I mean?
Right.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
But then if Sam needs to step out, who would fill in for?
Well, he wouldn't. He wouldn't, because that issue would benefit all airlines, not just his.
Right.
But if there were something before the board that said, let's give a subsidy to United Airlines for $100,000 because they're the only American carrier coming here, then he shouldn't participate in that issue because it benefits his own company.
Right, like if it's dealing with just United flights to Hawaii, or because they're the only ones who go that route, right?
That's right.
From my understanding, yeah.
That's right.
Okay, and what about having GBB having paying a consultant instead of getting those people involved in like a tourism consultant or something like that?
Well,
there's some type of company like advises governments or stuff on stuff like that.
I expect that there is. That's an interesting idea.
Because they have for the the insurance bidding and stuff like that, and other risk management, all the for like the airports, and they have their own consultants, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just wondering if that's something that would solve the issue too, because it seems like it just gets messy. Well, I don't know. It's just kind of crazy.
It's gotten kind of messy now. It never has been before, as I recall. And there's something interesting about the Visitors Bureau. It is not a government of Guam agency, believe it or not. Even though the governor appoints board members, etc., it is not a government of Guam agency. Now, going back to the consultant, I don't know, but I'm hypothesizing that it would probably be pretty expensive to hire somebody with the kind of expertise that we're getting from these 5 industry guys basically for nothing.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like real, it was just kind of funny to me that, they're in there, so there's already a conflict, It seems to me that there's just already an existing conflict,
Well, let me give
they're going to talk to each other because a lot of them own most of the hotels. They dictate a lot of what can happen. The market is not that big, it's not like there's a lot of players in it. And I would assume that Guam being so small, everybody sees each other, and everybody, how do you get around, all that stuff? And it's It's pretty interesting. I don't know. That's why I wanted to ask how are they, if they're elected, then I guess that's the fairest way that the people have, come up with.
Right.
And it's interesting how it's not a government thing, but somehow the government is getting, kind of involved here now. So, I'm just wondering. I mean, and when was the GVB established? Do you know when?
I'm
in the 90s?
No, it's been around probably since the early 70s.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm guessing, but that would be my best guess.
Okay, then. Okay, I just wanted to touch on that. And then also I wanted to ask you, you had that thing on your website before, the your covenant or something like that about government accountability and transparency, and I forgot the other one.
Oh, you mean when I was back in the days when I was a candidate?
Yeah, or you had your blog or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You spoke about it. Transparency, accountability, and
priorities.
There you go, priorities.
Yeah.
So seems like these guys are having some those issues, and they need to settle that.
Good point, Jesse. Good point.
Okay.
Good talking to you, Jesse. Thanks for calling.
Yep. All right.
So long.
Probably part of understanding GVB is understanding the Tourism Attraction Fund, because that's pretty much what funds the GVB, or what it's the reason why there's a function of the GVB.
Yeah. So,
and it's not taxed. We're not taxed. That's actually funds that come in through these businesses.
So the guys that own the hotels are, if listening to Jesse's idea of hiring a consultant, the guys that own the hotels are saying, geez, 11% of every room rent goes to the GVB. Wouldn't it be nice if we had something to say about how they spend that money that comes out of our coffers? So it's not a perfect system. I have thought that oftentimes it was something of a boondoggle myself. But this is a new dimension, and strange as it may seem, I think something good will come of it. Oftentimes controversy leads to improvement and reform. So leave it to Carl Gutierrez to make the call if he thinks it needs to be made, right?
Intention or not.
Exactly. Okay, so I got about 5 more minutes to go. I'll just start out here with Vince. Vince is, the thing about Vince Akimoto, he beats around the bush so much. You never know what's real. You never know what's really on his mind.
One day we'll hear what's on his mind.
Yeah, one day he'll really bare his soul to us, right? So the nice thing about Vince's letters, you could start it today and put it aside and pick it up tomorrow in a different place, and it flows right along. So here's how Vince starts out on his letter to the editor. Guam's healthcare problems rain like bombs, exploding mercilessly into the decrepit brick and mortar of our island's public hospital and indigenous clinic facilities. I'll bet he's dynamite on limericks too. There once was a man named Vince. There once was a doc named Vince. All right, metastatic cancer, epidemic kidney failure, relentless diabetes, and heart disease bombard our medical system. The rocket's red glare illuminates the humanitarian crisis of elderly care and mental health shortfalls in our land of the free and home of the brave. I almost feel like I should be standing when I read this. Our medical system is at a critical juncture. The pandemic has stripped all pretense from a corrupt island government that chose political patronage over people's lives. In plain sight of hypocritical GovGuam bureaucrats, COVID has killed more than 330 taxpayers and silenced their votes forever. High on the hill in Oka, a forsaken hospital named in memory of the people of Guam, has perpetuated patient safety violations and dirty toilets while perversely providing refuge for greedy political psychopaths.
Wow.
Meanwhile, back in Manila, a burnt-out public health laboratory rots in the sun. This is one of those after the big nuclear war types scripts, right? Yeah, post-apocalyptic. Yeah, and as Governor Liu fantasizes about $1 billion medical campus in Pagat, the festering GovGuam failures that are Simon Sanchez High School, Cross Island Road, and the Agana swimming pool all scream out why we can't have nice things. A whole generation of Guam's greatest citizens has been taken too soon, while other Pacific Island nations have been relatively spared. Gone now are Guam's fathers or mothers or neighbors or friends. We have forever lost their wisdom, their institutional knowledge, and their smiles. Because of the malfeasance of Guam senators, our children have painfully learned that death leaves a heartache that no one can heal, and love leaves a memory no one can steal. I'm just about there, right, Jose? Yeah, so I'll come back to Vince tomorrow. But right now, it's time for my visual aids, and for me to say, let's go, Brandon. See you Monday. See you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Not taking anything back, I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Biden insisting Monday he was not calling for the ouster of Russia's President Vladimir Putin when he said Saturday in Poland this man cannot remain in power.
The last part of the speech was talking to the Russian people, telling them what we thought. And I was communicating this to not only the Russian people, but the whole world. This is just stating a simple fact that this kind of behavior is totally unacceptable.
The president said his comments were not policy, but a reflection of his own personal moral outrage. Ukrainian and Russian negotiators are meeting in Istanbul, Turkey at this hour. Face-to-face peace talks for the first time in 2 weeks, with President Zelensky suggesting there is room for compromise over the Donbass region. But there are reports the Kremlin is sending in soldiers for hire.
According to British intelligence, Russia is deploying its private military firm to eastern Ukraine. The UK says the Wagner Group is expected to send more than 1,000 mercenaries, including its senior leaders, to undertake combat operations. The group, reputed to be close to President Vladimir Putin, is already suspected of abuses in Mali, Libya, and Syria.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt in Lviv. Actor Will Smith has posted an online apology to comedian Chris Rock.
Nearly 24 hours after slapping comedian Chris Rock on the stage of the Academy Awards, actor Will Smith apologized, saying his actions were unacceptable and inexcusable. In the Instagram post, Smith says he reacted emotionally to a joke about his wife Jada's medical condition. In addition to apologizing to Rock, Smith apologized to the Academy, producers of the show, and everyone attending or watching. Saying he's a work in progress, the newly minted Academy Award winner says he regrets his behavior has stained what has been an otherwise gorgeous journey for all of us.
Fox's Rich Dennison. America is listening to Fox News.